Third time.
Grant us, we ask, to speak, to hear, and to learn, so that our fears may be banished, our minds may become enlightened, our faith be increased, our steps directed towards you. Amen. As you know, there are a lot of problems with this season, and there are a lot of problems with it theologically. One of the problems is nobody ever reads the texts. And the texts simply, literally do not make sense. One of the famous stories, I'm guilty of this. I remember reading, I learned this from the Episcopalians when I had 4 services Christmas Eve, last full-time congregation I had. The famous procession, you take this very old Bible and you go down to the middle of the sanctuary when you have the acolytes and you hold it and you read from Luke. In those days, in a great stentorian stained glass voice, in those days it came to pass that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be enrolled. And each went into the town in which he was born. And Joseph also went up from Nazareth to Galilee. The problem is nobody ever actually reads what that means. What that means is, number one, there was a worldwide census during the reign of Caesar Augustus. Never happened, ever. Number two, it makes no sense. You had to go back to the town in which you were born for a census. Now just think about that for a minute. If everybody had to go back to the town in which you were born for a census, what a mess that would be. I asked my students, what were the 4 largest cities in the Mediterranean of during the Roman Empire of Caesar Augustus? They were Rome, Corinth, Antioch, which had 300,000 people or more, and Alexandria. Half of the people in those massive cities were not born in those cities. Imagine those cities emptied out, people going all over the Mediterranean to return back to where it would have been an economic and environmental disaster. It makes no sense. And so then I said, worse than that is, nobody gets this. Mary is heavily pregnant. Now, I said, does anybody understand maps? The problem is people do not look at maps, especially Americans. So I said, I don't know if you know where Nazareth is. Nazareth is up here. And I said, let me work at it like this, because my students get this. We're in Miami-Dade County. Think of Nazareth as either Palm Beach County or northern Broward County. Does that work? They go, oh, whoa. I said, no, not at all. He has to go, Joseph and Mary, 62 miles from there down to there. I said, you're going to put a pregnant woman walking 62 miles. And they said, what about the donkey? I said, oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Joseph and Mary were dirt poor. Everybody knows that. He was a carpenter. He was, and by the way, Nazareth, as everybody knows now and agrees, was a dirt poor village. I said, how many people have dogs? My students raised their hand. Are dogs expensive? Do you have to feed a dog? Dogs cost money to feed. You have to take care of them. Now, imagine the size of a donkey, a small donkey. Can you imagine how much that costs to feed if you're poor? You've got to feed it. You've got to take care of it. You've got vet bills. Yes, you can't you've got to take care of and you're going to take a pregnant woman on a donkey you can't afford. And I said, and how far are you going to get in one day? My student said, you're killing us. I said, I'm thinking about it. How far are you going to put a pregnant woman on a donkey in one day? Seriously. I said, you finally get out of the Galilee, but you're not in Judea. Nobody looks at the map. There's this place called Samaria. The Jews hated the Samaritans hated the Jews, so you think they're going to give you a place to what? Lie on the ground? You're getting nothing. You're getting buried. You're not even getting the air. So where are you going to go? They'll let you pass through Samaria, but they're not going to let you stay in Samaria. So how are you going to get through the 15, 20 miles through Samaria to get down to Bethlehem? I said, this drives me nuts. I said, so you read this, in those days it came to pass. I think of all the great old epic movies. Somebody came out with that voice, the voice. It sounded lovely. Until you think about it, how are you going to get a pregnant woman from there, 62 miles down there, to another dirt poor village for something that never happened? I said, this drives me nuts. And then, you get other things like, what do you do if you get like We Three Kings? I had a student, I'll never forget this. We talked about in the New Testament, I said, the 3 kings. I said, what were they? Somebody said, well, there were 3, of course. There were kings, and they were Balthasar, Melchior, and Gaspar. Only one problem, it never happened. What do you mean it never happened? I said, look at the Bible. It never meant, yes, it did. So I had a student look up. This is one of those things that's so, you never forget this. I had him read Matthew. And it says in Matthew, quote, wise men from the east. Whereupon the student looked up and said, you changed this. I said, I did not change the Gospel of Matthew. I said, I need to help you with this. I said, it was never there. Well, where did it come from? I said, people didn't read. So you made up plays and stories to act out what was in the Bible. So people knew kings. They made up a story about people coming that were important. Magi, which are Zoroastrian clergy, and that's what the big religion was from the East, these were big deals. So since you don't have, that does, nobody understands that, you make them kings. So you make it, but that did not, it was the way to educate people. Well, I thought it said three. Well, I'm sorry you thought it said three kings. If you read the text itself rather than what other people told you about the text, it drives me nuts. So, theologically, nobody reads texts, but they're great authorities. Number two, what if you're not Christian? This season is a pain in the neck. You're not Christian, you get hit over the head with all these images, which other Christians don't like either. You get pounded on the head. What if you are a Muslim? What if you are a Sikh? We've got Sikhs in town. And of course, what if you're Jewish? And of course, the problem with Judaism today is most of the Jews today in this country are just, they're absolutely having fits because they can't stand Netanyahu, and people tend to forget. But Israel's politics is not Judaism. There's a big, wide difference. So our Jewish friends get insulted at Christmas time. Atheists get insulted. Agnostics get insulted. It's like, what do you do? And you get some of you likes me who likes Jesus' teachings but can't stand teachings about him. And I go nuts too because people don't read texts. And then let us not forget the kind of thing you can't help but wondering, did the Norse gods really win? I mean, really. Have you ever looked? Were there Christmas trees in Bethlehem? No! Were there Christmas trees in Nazareth? Absolutely not. You did not go see on some poorhouse a wreath. You do realize that wreaths didn't make it into the Christmas thing till 1500, and they were Lutheran in the 1500s. The wreath, the big wreath thing that we got was from Hamburg, Germany in 18-something, when the poor kids didn't know how soon it was till Christmas, so a Lutheran pastor would put 4 candles to remind them how many more weeks we got left. Jesus wouldn't know what a wreath was, and you put this pine tree or spruce or something in his house and say, this is you, and he'd go, what is that? Do they have Christmas trees in Zululand? I mean, seriously. I mean, yeah, I'll find Lebanon, trees of Lebanon, but we're talking about Zulu. What about, Hong Kong? Maybe because the English were there.
Bonsai Christmas tree.
Huh? Bonsai Christmas tree. We can't help but wonder if the Norse gods aren't laughing like, ha, ha, ha. We finally got our way. And then, the other problem is in all of this, and this really drives me nuts. No matter how you cut it, you can't help, this drives me absolutely nuts, singing Angels We Have Heard on High. We love singing, what? They're not, have you ever met an angel? There's a thing on Netflix called Lucifer. Oh, it's a riot. Oh, yes, great show. And I'm thinking, if this is one of the angels, does he need a chaplain? I'm thinking, that's Lucifer, for heaven's sake. What do you mean? I'm thinking of angels, great ideas, angels, but I'm always thinking, I wonder what the other kind are like.
How many of them fit on the head of a pin?
Oh, thank you for that. And I'm thinking angels. But we sing it, don't we? We all love singing Angels We Have Heard on High. And then you get Christ the Newborn King. If you told Jesus he was a king, he'd have no idea what you're talking about. He is a Galilean peasant preacher. He's poor, singing some kind of king up there with thrones and stuff, but we sing it anyway. And away we sing. And O Little Town of Bethlehem. I don't know if you know this. There are only 2 birth stories in the entire New Testament. And they both have Jesus in Bethlehem in different ways. Matthew has him born and living in Bethlehem. Luke has this story made up. And by the way, nobody else anywhere in the New Testament ever heard of Jesus being born in Bethlehem. But you didn't know that. Earliest writer was Paul. All those letters of Paul never mentioned Bethlehem. Thought Jesus was born of Joseph and Mary. Just a simple birth. Bet you didn't know that. People don't read text. They will, I love Jesus, but I said, do you ever read any texts about Jesus? You don't actually read the text. But we sing it anyway. O Little Town of Bethlehem. We Three Kings we sing. There were no kings, but we sing that. We do this. It drives me nuts.
You figure sing the we three's oral asterisks.
Well, I know, but we sing that anyway. And I'm thinking of this, and I'm just as bad. And then we do stuff that's also equally irrational. We sing this I love this. I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. I think that's the funniest song in the world. I bounce it up and down. I even have it on my car. I'm going to plug it in when it comes on. I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. Only a hippopotamus will do. Don't want a doll, no dinky tinker toy. I want a hippopotamus to play with and enjoy. I love that song. Now, I cannot explain that. The Reverend Dr. Loves, he wants a hippopotamus for Christmas. I mean, that defies description. We Three Kings sings it anyway. What do we have on our door? I can't believe this. A wreath. I'm writing this thing and I'm thinking, did you look at your front door, tenant? Did you look at your front door? You have one of those naughty things. Reverend Dr. My Foot, I said. Or here's another one. Another stupid thing, which I love too. Grandma got run over by a reindeer. Walking home from our house Christmas Eve, you can say there's no such thing as Santa, but for me and Grandpa, we believe. Not in Jesus, but a reindeer running over. And we laugh at these things. And all I want for Christmas is you. Love that song. Mariah Carey, yes. About two front teeth. And then I have to tell you, the great song, too, is by, I hate to say Madonna did a really good job of this, Santa Baby.
Oh, yeah.
A deed. One little ring, not a phone. I mean, these songs, it just drives me nuts. Because on the one hand, I know rationally what I think and what's proper text. But I'm out there like this. I'm singing Angels We Have Heard on High, We Three Kings, Nordic wreaths on the thing. Hippopotami. I mean, Christmas time, hippopotamus, just help me here.
Italian Christmas donkey song.
And yet other stuff. And I mean, and let's not forget, and we're singing at Christmas Eve. We've got, help me out with it, the Spanish. Burrito. Oh, sing it. Tuki, 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 too. And I'll be singing tuki, tuki, tuki. This drives me nuts. What is this? So I remember this, and so I'm going with this stuff. And then I remember a quote from a colleague of mine that really kind of says it. Reason doesn't have to get in the way of magic or wonder in the world. Which reminds me of going back to a thing that I had read before. We tend to forget, and me too, the limerick. It's a system that deals with our emotions. And the reality is you and I have been, well, I have to do this. I can't speak for anybody else. I have been pounded with academics. You must think logically. You must be reasonable. Everything must be consistent. There was always a part of me saying, but I'm not always consistent. I'm not always reasonable. And I like things that don't make any sense at all, like the hippopotamus. Tuki, tuki, tuki. I mean, this does not make sense. And my argument has been against liberal religion. It's just too cerebral. If you want to lecture, go to my classroom. If you want to hear a sermon, if you want to hear a share, then you come here where you get emotional and you share things. Evangelicals are not the only one who can get emotional. We have emotions. We feel things. We ought to be not embarrassed about that. You go into some churches, it's God's frozen people. Skate down the aisle. There's no emotion. There's no this. And God forbid you raise your voice. Preacher gets excited. I mean, good heavens. Tuki, tuki, tuki. All right. What I'm trying to suggest is that probably at Christmas time, it is a great reminder that we can do two things at once. We can be irrational and irrational at the same time. Because human beings are not consistent. We're not consistent. We are consistently inconsistent. Or as the groom this morning said, we are imperfectly perfect. We're not consistent all the time. We can be, on the one hand, giving a sermon about some of the issues with text and how Jesus gets misread all the time, but then I emotionally sing things and feel good about it. And we do both at the same time. And I think probably my problem with the season really is that I have trouble remembering that. That on the one hand, you can be very, very precise in all the right things, but the other time you let loose too and it doesn't make any sense at all, it still feels good. It still feels good, and better than that, it's okay. Because that's what human beings do. We hold two different things at the same time, and that's what it is to be human. My dogs get this. I don't know why they get this, and I don't get it at all. The dogs seem to perfectly understand you can do all the right things, but then you go goof around and have a good, and they get it. They can enjoy the kind of wide personality stretches. And I have been too much in a box, and you must be consistent, you must be rational, you must have all your stuff written out, you must be very academic. In the classroom, that's fine. But for fellowships and gathering, emotions are fine too. Singing is fine. Laughing is fine. And saying how goofy we can be, including with hippopotamus, realizing that Jesus was not born the way they say he was, but we can still sing songs and enjoy a moment. Now, one final postscript to this. I don't think you and I are aware of just how religion is not going away. There's a book I'm going to be having a sermon on by a guy named Melvin Kenner. I never heard of him. What he did is he started taking a look at why all these people are saying religion should die, God is dead. Well, guess what? Religion is alive and well. It's not going away. And so he started looking at the rational systems and irrational systems of human being as biology. We are exactly what I just said. We're both. We're rational, irrational, we're emotional, and we're cold. We're all of that. And he said, for instance, I wasn't aware of this. Did you know what the largest religious festival is in the world? I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Kumbh. It took place on February 4th, 2019 in India. It takes place regularly in India. 50 million people showed up. Not all of them were Hindu. Lots were Christians and others who wanted to see what was going on. They weren't Hindu, but they wanted to know, what is this? Had I been there, I would have gone too. There would have been a part of me that said, what is this? And festivals of lights. And the Shias have a huge festival in Karbala, where Hussein got beheaded. 30 million people. I would have gone too. I would have wanted to see what is it that gathers people? What is the emotional thing? How does it build us up? What does it do for us? And I want to know. So there's that part of us that we let loose. Maybe Christmas time is a time not only to reaffirm the birth, which we can all agree upon, someone was born, but to also reaffirm who we are as humans. We're rational, but we laugh, and we sing songs, and we enjoy, and we even have a hippopotamus and a tuki. Amen.
Amen.